And hello to you in Norway. See how very wavy my hair is today? I got caught in a rainstorm just a little while ago out there. We went and tried to get a kitchen island, and they'd already sold the one they had. So we got to wait till next week. I can't get over how wavy my hair is. Okay, I really wanted to talk a little bit today about the issues surrounding how you take time for yourself. What do you do when you're emotionally exhausted? Because that's one of those things I'm extremely interested in because I deal with this on a regular basis. I used to deal with it in NLQ. I deal with it here now sometimes. It depends upon what's going on. Right now is one of those times. Okay, so if you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Tinkemeyer. I used to write for Pathos. If you need to know the spelling of my name, go to Pathos, and my name is completely spelled out there. Um, I used to write about quiverful evangelical religious news and all the things that were happening in the theology, the dangerous, crazy theology. Did she emotionally exhaust you again? She can be a bit trying at times. Java Man, she's part of it, but she's not even the largest part of it. Hey, Michelle. So, where was I? I was talking about who I am. So, don't bully anybody I'm going to talk about today. Don't bully anybody in general. I'm just going to throw that out there. These are my opinions alone. Stand by them. No, and it can be exhausting when you start looking at the frenetic frenzy of activity around a certain person. That's enough to exhaust anybody. But part of the reason that I'm exhausted is something my husband likes to say. He will sometimes remind me, you are not everybody's shrink. And this kind of plays in with a lot of the things that she's been saying lately. I have a large group of friends that have various things wrong with them, who sometimes will call me up in a tizzy because their lives are falling apart. And I can do a certain amount of that, but after a while, it starts to become incredibly draining. Hey, Dances in the Rain. Hey, Shaylin. So happy Friday. You're right. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. And this has been one of those weeks where I've just been kind of overwhelmed. So if you follow my Twitter, you will have noticed that I haven't been on as much. I've been stepped back because of this thing. And like I said earlier, it doesn't entirely have to do with everyone's least favorite celebrity journalist. At least that's what she calls herself. But I have caught a couple things that have caught my eye that I'm glad about. One of them is that Todd Chrisley is now fully engaged with all of his daughters, including, you guessed it, Lindsay. He posted the most lovely picture of him and his three daughters. You have to remember, a lot of us don't have formal training to be a person's shrink. I know that, Java Man. So that's basically where I am this week. It's just been too much. And when I have bad asthma, it's way too much. So what do you guys do when people start exhausting you? I know what I do. I tend to pull back, and that tends to be when I go into my room where I have all my art supplies and start going to town. And that's kind of what I've been doing lately. Even though yesterday and there was crazy, I tell you about that. The other thing I do is I read a lot, but I'm beginning to realize you have to be really careful about what you're reading because things can steal your peace too. Right now, I've been reading Michael Cohen's book, Revenge, and it's awful. The book is not awful, and it's not awfully written. It's just it is awful on my psyche to read that right now. And I know from reading it, there's no way that Mr. Cohen went through his experiences without walking away with a boatload of PTSD, which I know we all tend to struggle with when we've been through these kind of things. Watch out for the energy vampires. A nap is always nice. Yes, I have a sister-in-law like that, always in chaos. I'm not made for that. I'm not made for that either. I'm not made for constant chaos. So one of the things I absolutely love about living here is if you want to take a step back, it's easy to do. It's peaceful. Oh, you got your meeting? Okay, I'll see you later. My husband's just informed me he's got a little meeting with his guy. That's cool. So he's doing his thing. I'm trying to dry my hair out so I can go play bingo tonight, of all things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm imperfect. I'm working on this, as I know all of us are. And the big thing that I'm learning is that when it all becomes overwhelming, it's really okay to turn the computer off, to turn the phone off, to turn the messenger off and just step back. I've had to do that, and it's been a bit much. And this kind of goes along with what dear Catherine is talking about, because she's talking about being a sounding board and a healing for everyone suffering from all kinds of PTSD and religious trauma from having come out of CULTs. I'm just going to say about that if you're not trained, at the very least, some kind of low-level social work, like basic level social worker, which you only have to have a high school diploma to be, and a little bit of training. If you are not trained in any way, shape, or form, and I've worked in social work, I actually have some education in that, so I will let my friends go on for a little while because, and my years as a Stevens minister, asking the questions. That's one of the first things they teach you when you start studying this stuff, is ask questions, because if you can ask the right questions, a lot of times you can get the person to see their own problem. Not always, it doesn't always work, but a lot of times it is. I tend to pull away and hermit. Well, that's kind of what I do too, because I'm a hermit with art supplies. So I'm going to just suggest, if you get in that space, that's probably the best thing to do. That's one thing that has been trying about NLQ, is everybody and their brother, no longer quivering, has reached out to me with their trauma. And if I can help them, I'll talk to them. If I can't, I'll say, you need to go seek counseling. Because there are a lot of times when the best help you can do is just to let somebody vent, to tell you their problems. And that's okay. But when someone becomes stuck and they continually vent to the same subject, I have a close friend who I dearly love, who has been stuck on the same subject all the time I've known her, which is over 10 years now. She's still trying to work out in her mind why when she went into a certain organization, why it went haywire. We're talking 10 years on, and she is still talking about this. I'm going to have a conversation with her that's going to basically say, we can't go over this ground any longer. You need to release and let it go, or I'm not going to be able to talk to you anymore, because it's just too much all the time. And if it was an important organization, I would be more likely to listen to her continually complain about it. But it is a voluntary one, and I've steered a couple of people away from that group because I can see how toxic they are. It's like Lucy's booth on peanuts, psychiatric help, 5 cents. That's kind of how I feel sometimes, Java Man, except I'm not getting 5 cents out of the deal. And as I said, I'll listen to anybody for a while. And when I was writing NLQ, when I was writing No Longer Quivering, scads of emails, comments, people reaching out on Messenger to tell me their stories. And like I said, as you listen to people, as you will say at some point, you have to seek out therapy. At some point, you have to say to people, you need to seek professional. Exactly. I am not able to go around with you on this any longer. That's what I'm going to have to tell my friend, because it's just become. Yesterday, she sent me 47 messages. And I was just overwhelmed. Finally, I just said, look, I'm not in a good place, and just left it at that, because the day before yesterday, one of my friends runs those wine and design things. And she asked me if I would be willing to work up a couple of projects that could be done. Well, I haven't painted in oils or acrylics in almost a year. Okay. since the time I flashed the world, the time that I had the day where I got naked 3 times and other people saw me. And that was the last time. And I didn't react then. This time I did. I reacted pretty horribly to the acrylics, which is a shame because I loved the project. It was mixed right on the canvas. Don't use a palette or a palette knife. Mix it with one brush right on the canvas and paint with a one brush. It was a fun project to do, but it set off my asthma yet again. And this is the first time I've ever reacted to this kind of paint. So somebody pointed out to me, I'm going to have to wear my mask anytime I paint anymore. My big scary respirator mask, the one I have. And it wasn't even Mardi Gras. Yep. It's not Mardi Gras. So it was a wild day. You're right. And just to have her doing that on top of it was just too much, particularly when I'd already talked to my best friend in the States. Thankfully, that was not let's dump problems. That was just us going, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Can you believe that? And I turned down a pile of phone calls from a dear friend because I just couldn't talk last night. I should probably text her when that happens, say, hey, I can't talk. My voice is gone. So she doesn't keep calling, because she definitely did keep calling last night. And I won't pick up if I'm sick. It's just where my line is now. And that's a new line. That's a new boundary for me. So somebody asked me to tell them the tale about how I ended up with a pile of water beds. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. Somebody asked me for that, so I'm going to just throw that out there. My husband, before I met him, from like 1980 on to like 83, 82, 83, he had a business building water beds in South Louisiana. And it didn't go well. Eventually they went out of business and had to liquidate everything. So somehow we ended up with a lot of water beds, mattresses and liners and different things, and a storage unit. So when we came back to the States, we went with the waterbed. We haven't looked back since. And everybody keeps asking for the story. There's nothing really interesting to say about that. I didn't know him then. I didn't know him. I know him at the tail end when he was liquidating everything. And I had never slept on a waterbed until we set one up when we moved back to the States from Germany. And I've never looked back. I love my waterbed. But sadly, we are out of any kind of supplies that he brought with us now, finally. And this was like 1983. How are cats with water beds? Well, Java Man, it really depends on the cat. My Siamese cat was terrible with the water bed. He would walk around the mattress. If I stripped the mattress bare to wash the sheets and the mattress pads, he would walk around the bare mattress and poke holes in it. But he's the only one I've had that will do that. And now I've learned I keep the mattress pad on. I keep 2 mattress pads and I switch them off if I need them to wash them, rather than leaving a bare mattress, because cats are not necessarily good with water beds. I don't know. And it's always funny when there's a little cat that comes to our door that makes it to our bedroom and discovers the mattress moves. That's always funny. So not exciting story. And we've had 2 businesses. I had one with him and he had one before he met me, and both of them went under. Let me tell you something. That is something I never hope to go through again, because if you have a business that goes under, it's not just that you've lost money and that you failed at what you set out to do. It's just so many things, and it's rather soul crushing. After first pregnancy with one, I was done. Well, they're not suitable for everybody. I'm going to say that. I'm just totally used to it by now. And when I had to sleep on a regular bed, it's like, I don't like this because I'm too used to that. Oh, so that's really all I have to say today. I didn't have much going on to be able to come on here and tell you guys a whole pile of stuff. Oh, I forgot. Yesterday, my sewing room. I'm dragging ass around yesterday all day long because of the asthma. I'm just like walk around like a zombie. Well, My husband said, "Well, I heard that one of my kids is probably coming next month. She's looking for another job, and she thinks that she's just going to leave her job and come here and visit for a few weeks." And I am so down for that. I can't wait to see her. But in the meantime, it's like, my sewing room is not going to clean itself. There's no cheerful little forest critters or fairies going to come in here and clean this, unlike what Disney led us to believe. So I was in there cleaning yesterday, and I walked in there and said, "What is that? What am I smelling?" I kept smelling shit. I was like, "Where is it?" So I found out where it was. There were two little piles, and one of them quite fresh. Yes, folks, I had a little critter in my sewing room. Now, I really just had to go in there and sweep mop dust and move a few things around. I like to go through the closets maybe once every 6 months to rearrange my supplies, see what I've got, see what I need. And this thing kept squealing and running around before I finally heard it out the front door. It was a possum, a little tiny possum. We got little ones here. But that was not something I ever anticipated in seeing here, was this little possum that was crapping everywhere. And as soon as I walked in the bedroom, I actually said, "It smells like possum crap in here," because we had possums get into our house in Virginia one time. There was nothing but fields behind us for years and years. And then they brought in a backhoe and they started plowing the fields to put houses in. And we suddenly saw this big mama possum in our apple trees with a lot of little babies on her back. And then all of a sudden the babies were in the house. So unfortunately, I know what possum poop smells like. And as soon as I smelled it, I was like, there's got to be a possum in here somewhere. So that's one thing about Costa Rica, is there are little critters everywhere. I think it probably came in through the cat door. We have a cat door we put in because I got tired of being the cat doorman. And now we've had the first wild visitor. So we have to talk about it, my husband and I. I'm tempted just to lock the cat door and make everybody come in and out the front now. This opossum wasn't too bad, but one year back in the States, when I was in Louisiana, when I was in Louisiana before I met my husband, I had a cat door for my cat, and I had a skunk come in. So that's something you never want to see happen. And there are skunks here. They're just a little bit like the possums, are a little bit different than what we get in the States. I sometimes see skunks here. I see possums all the time. So I don't want any more critters coming in. I got to figure out what I'm going to do about the critter situation. So I'm likely to be extremely busy the next month because we're in the final push of getting everything done in our house. Every now and then we're like, hey, let's remodel this, let's paint this, let's do that. We're in the middle of one of those times right now. We just had a bunch of furniture custom made. I rearranged everything in the living room. I have to get a table made for my sewing machine. That's the next thing. And then some kind of plant holder, I think. So this afternoon, we're supposed to, I wish I could remember the store. It's Casa something or other. It's an interesting store because everything is imported from France. It's the French owners who they have these stores in France, and they decided to make one here because the daughter moved here and she's running it. They have high-end stuff, but they also have high-end prices. And I'm not sure I'm willing to pay that kind of money for an island. So we'll see what happens. But we're about to go there in a little bit. Hopefully no little critters will come in the cat door while we're gone. I swear that cat door was a good idea initially, but now not so much. So that's one of the things that could happen here in Costa Rica, is you can find stuff in your house all the time. I found tarantulas, scorpions. One time Stinky brought me a bat through the cat door. He ran in through the cat door. We heard what he had in his mouth was squeaking. He let it go. It flew to the top of the living room, and the living room has these high cathedral ceilings. So it was way up there flying around and around and around. I couldn't get it down. I tried everything. So I ended up opening all the doors because the end of the living room was all glass. We just opened all that up and backed up into here because I kept thinking rabies, rabies, or when I was a kid, we used to call them ray babies. And we thought it was something that happened when you married your cousin. I don't know. Kids pick up the weirdest ideas. Tomorrow, I will probably be back to the usual mixture of nonsense here with what's her face and maybe a book review. I'd like to do a book review of the Michael Cohen book, which I'm almost done with, because he makes some pretty startling accusations about the Justice Department in this book, and I'm not sure how much of that is actually accurate or not. And I know he believes it's true, so I'm going to just trust him to say that it is true. It's a disturbing book if it's true. Let's just say that. And I think I need to move on to something less gruesome. So I'm going to fill my Kindle with books tonight and hurry on through to the rest of that. We are still waiting on how that court case is going to go at the end of the month. Java Man, I'm still waiting on that too. You know, I know that the courts usually give you every opportunity to state your case, and sometimes it will waive those limits and you say, hey, I missed it because X, Y, or Z. She doesn't have an excuse. She has no excuse as to why she missed it, except that the reality of it, what I think happened is her and Graham Crackers was so busy chasing down the agreement with Todd Chrisley that it just pulled a boner and they just forgot about it. Because I know how that is when you're so focused, laser focused on one thing, and then you forget everything else. Because God knows I've done that. I've just never done it with a court case. I am a giant fan of Post-it notes. I should turn this around and show you. I have Post-it notes all along the wall here because my brain is shot. I got lyrical brain a lot of times. Considering the content of the document, she could have turned it in early. Exactly. The Cohen book is called Revenge. Let me get the rest of it. It's like Revenge. He is alleging that President Trump, that to prosecute him and to throw him to the bus. Okay, here it is. Revenge, how Donald Trump weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice against his critics. That's the thing. The book is interesting, but it's a hard read. I'm not going to lie to you. This is a man that has been traumatized by what he's been through. The most fascinating part of the book to me was when he talked about what happened when he went to the prison in Otisville. Because I'm always wondering how people make that mind jump to be living like a millionaire to living like the rest of us Joe Schmoes. I'm always curious about that and who adjusts and who doesn't, and if people manage to make the best of it. You know, prison would suck, but it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to start again. I mean, you've been through these things. If you go to prison, I mean, it's an opportunity. Start again. Paris Hilton didn't handle it so well. No, she did not. She did not. And I gotta admit it, I was crueler back then about her and laughed when I heard that she was having a hard time in prison. Now, after hearing her story about how she was abused at the troubled teen residential home, I have a lot more sympathy for her. A lot of what she does now makes a lot more sense. I know now that I'm looking at somebody who has been through a lot of trauma as a teen. And the way we process trauma is very different if you're a child or you're a teenager. Because remember, our brains don't stop developing until we're like 25 years old. So up until that point, it's very different. I think most of them should, Java Man, I'm answer your question, Should these troubled teen places be shut down? If they're not shut down, they need to be so tightly regulated and inspected, because I'm hearing so many of these. And when I wrote for NLQ, you have Hepzibah House, New Bethany. I could probably name off 10 of these places where it was the same crap, roll-off homes, where the kids got abused, primarily little girls, and they got this horrible abuse. It's in sexual nature too, sexual abuse, physical abuse, all kinds of different abuse going on, medical neglect. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And yet there are good places that will deal with things like that. And there are some residential treatment centers that just focus on kids with known psychiatric diagnoses and such. Dr. Phil was always promoting them. Yes. And one of the ones that he promoted is the one that Paris Hilton went to that ended up with all of the allegations. I mean, I saw Dr. Phil the other night. He was on one of the news programs. I wish I could remember which one. I want to say it was Fox News, because my husband watches everything. He'll watch MSNBC and Fox News, and then usually pilot a thought about whatever's going on right down the middle between those two, rather than all the way to the left or all the way to the right. Dr. Phil came on, I think it was Sean Hannity's show, and was talking about wokeness of all stupidity and cancel culture. I'm not a big fan of cancel culture, but at the same time, there are a lot of things in our society that just need to go away and die, like racism. There are some fights going on right now in the anti-Katie Joy community about racism. And I'm sorry, it is never okay to talk to a Black man like some people have recently and said things like calling a white man his master and just all kinds of just silly stuff that should never be thrown. The problem with these places is, as we discussed earlier, and a lot of these places don't employ people with formal training for these issues. Java man, you're exactly right about that. I saw that when I worked at one of these places for a while. And my whole job was to do document review so that they could pass a Medicaid audit, a Medicare audit, Medicaid, Medicare, I don't remember which one it was. One of them kicks in depending upon, what's going on, but most of the patients there were wards of the state. There were a lot of kids that were failed evangelical adoptions from foreign countries. There were a lot of kids there that were lifted out of the worst of abuse, who may have been sold to be used in CP. Or one little boy's story was that he'd been locked in a basement for 2 years with his mother and burned with lit cigarettes. Just awful stories. And the facility, even if it was staffed by people who weren't the best trained, was still better than the home situation a lot of them were coming out of. Of course, Dr. Phil's license for dealing with those issues was suspended. So there is that. Exactly, Java Man. He is so ridiculous. Sometimes he manages to be right, but like he says, even a clock is right twice a day, a stop clock. He also likes to say every pancake has two sides, and he's right about that too. Almost every story has two sides. It doesn't mean that both sides are valid. It doesn't even mean that both sides are real or either side is real or truthful. It's just different sides. No matter how hard it is to deal with my son's behavior and addiction, I could not send him away. Barbara, you are likely doing the work of a saint there, because there's no reason why you as a parent can't advocate, can't try to take care of your child, can't try to push him up over that hurdle, whatever they're dealing with, help them out. I have an aunt whose son was in and out of rehab like over 40 times. And he's finally doing well. It took him all that time to go through because her wanting to take care of him and help him through it and taking him to his appointments and helping him with everything he needed didn't keep him sober. He still drank as long as he was in the environment where that was triggering him. Once he moved to a place is just veterans who are alcoholics and drug addicts. And they have a sober living village they live in Texas, and he's doing well there. He's staying off of all substances. So there's no one size fits all with any of this. We just kind of try to do the best we can. I don't recommend anybody sending a troubled teen to a troubled teen home because there's just too much chance of something go haywire. And that's a different thing if you send them to a mental hospital for a while. Those are people that are trained to deal with that kind of trauma. A stop clock is right twice a day. In the same vein, KJ is occasionally right about something, but it is rare. That's exactly right, Java Man. There's actually a couple times I've agreed with her on crap and said, I hate to admit it, but sis is a little bit right. One of the things that she keeps saying that I keep saying is don't go real life. That's one of the things, even though I think she's probably part of that problem too, based upon what happened with Marvon McRae and his family and everything that went down. I think she probably took it real life. And it's kind of funny, we never hear anything about that anymore now that he's been moved to a more permanent facility. Also, with Sophie Long in that situation. Yep. Exactly. The Sophie Long situation, I don't know well enough to know much about it beyond that she was acting out and saying that her mother's boyfriend, was it, or stepfather, was doing SA to her. Anytime a child makes that allegation, you have to investigate it. Now, whether or not it's true, who knows? But I know that there were CPS or DHS in that area, I think it is, was involved. That's the sort of thing that needs to be involved, but doesn't need to be endlessly discussed online. The judge had to seal the case because KJ supporters were calling the courthouse to get information. I remember that. That was a bad situation altogether. Sophie is not a celebrity, neither are her parents. So why this was even in the T community, I will never know. Abuse is not tea. I mean, we started saying that during the Sophie Long case, and it's really true. Abuse is not tea. And it really isn't even meant to be tea. My son is still a teenager, and I will not enable his behavior even when he wants to be given an excuse for being late for school. It's hard. It's a hard place to be. So what do you think KJ's next subject is going to be? Everybody keeps saying she's in love with Josh Duggar. I think that she's got some kind of weird obsession going with him. At the same time, I'm just going to throw out there, Josh Duggar used to be the Duggar cash cow. Personally, I think Sophie Long's situation may be that in which both her parents suck. Java Man, that thought did cross my mind. It did. I have another dear friend of mine who her ex-husband gained custody of his daughter when they were married because the mother was all kinds of stuff. The mother had mental issues. She had substance abuse, all sorts of things going on. So she lost custody of him permanently. And then he went on a semi-temporary permanent leave of his senses too, and started acting like he lost his damn mind with my friend. My friend ended up with custody of this guy's daughter. Neither parent ended up with custody at all. And then he killed himself. It was a real sticky situation. And she now, to this day, has the daughter, and I think she's going to be allowed to adopt her. So I'm very happy for her. I wish there were more people that could step up and take care of kids like that. I wish I was not quite as sickly. I would definitely have to think about it myself. I know people here in the American community who are foster parents because we have something special going on here in Costa Rica that you don't have in the States. You have overlapping crazy communities. We've got the Gringo community, and we have the Tico community. And very seldom do they overlap much. So if CPS here seizes up a child of the American community and puts them with a Tico foster family, it is such a cultural dislocation for that child because the way the Ticos live is very different than the way most Americans live. So they've had to develop a foster family group of Americans specifically for when Americans get seized. As I've said elsewhere, the Duggar train is out of steam. I feel she's trying to squeeze out everything from the Duggars because her cash faucet has slowed to a trickle. That could well be. And the Duggars are not as important as they used to be or as famous. I'm going to share something with you guys that I've never told anybody publicly. Back when Josh offended the first time, when it came out about him and his sisters, you know, at Pathos, we used to get paid by click. That money I was rolling in dough. I could have bought a brand new car from the clicks for the amount of money I made. It was pretty insane. And every time Josh offended or something happened with Josh, I could have done the same. Every time Josh offended, you could count on, if you wrote about it, you were going to get enormous hit numbers. Now, I've talked before about how crazy his fans are, how crazy the Duggar fans are, and how they would show up and beat you up if you said anything even slightly critical of the Duggars. And I'm extremely critical of Duggars. The Duggars entered the national psyche at exactly the same time I was leaving my old Quiverful church. So I was looking at them with the jaundiced eye of somebody who has lived that kind of life and seeing the unspoken abuse and neglect going on in those families. So the Duggar train, I don't foresee that it makes that kind of money anymore. I know even towards the end of me being on Pathos that a good Duggar article didn't make anywhere near that kind of money any longer. But apparently on YouTube, if you're a YouTuber who pulls things out of your derriere, you could have made a bunch of money. If that's the kind of channel you want to have, go right ahead. I'm just going to say, go right ahead, Miss Lady, and do your thing. But realize that not everybody likes that. Not everybody does that. Some of us would rather sleep at night without having to worry about if the roof fell on us in the middle of the night and we died. And heaven forfend that the God of the fundamentalists is actually the dude that's up there. What would that look like? So I don't know about you guys, but I have to be able to look myself in the mirror each day and say, you know, yeah, I may have screwed up, but I basically tried my damnedest today to be a good person. I loved it when she said her channel wasn't a T channel. T is literally in her intro. I know that. And I have come up with a term that I've been using about her borrowing of people's content, T piracy, because that's what she's doing. She's using other people's hard work. And that really sucks. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. I got to lay down. I'm running out of air again. And I got to look around and see what else I want to do, like lay around and watch TV while the husband's gone so he won't nag me about what I'm looking at on TV. People who have souls feel that way. Others have no soul or empathy. Yeah, exactly. Love you guys.